As president of ad revenue for Fox Networks Group, Joe Marchese leads operations in nonlinear advertising products and services for 21st Century Fox's global portfolio of channels. He was appointed to his current position after the company he founded, TrueX, was acquired by Fox. He's, of course, a progressive and provocative thought leader. Joe is really, truly helping to shape the future of advertising right now. Also, as president and CEO and executive producer of Fox Sports, Eric Shanks oversees all entities within Fox Sports, including Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2, the Fox Sports regional networks, and Fox Deportes. As executive producer of all Fox Sports productions, he's responsible for the look, sound, editorial content, and superior quality of all Fox Sports studio and game broadcasts, and he oversees all the programming, production, studio operations, marketing, promotion, and business and legal affairs for the networks. Both gentlemen are very busy gentlemen, so we're thrilled that they're here with us tonight. Put your hands together for Joe Marchese and Eric Shanks.
All right, well, let's talk about sports.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. thanks for having us. Yeah, as you can see, it's just the two of us in a conversation, which we do pretty regularly. So this is just kind of to share with everyone else.
It's an extension of our staff meeting this morning.
Yeah, this actually, no, this replaces some of the stuff we'll have to, so we can cancel tomorrow's. But seriously, if people jump in with questions, I don't think anyone on the live stream can do that, so we're sorry, but we feel you. But let's jump in. I mean, I'm going to read something. This is paper. This is actually a tweet on paper, so that's kind of fun. But Ad Age tweeted this last night watching the Emmys. Once again, we're left asking, as more award-winning content is on platforms with few or no commercials, where will the marketers advertise? Eric, where do you think people are going to advertise when everybody is making shows for ad-free platforms?
Well, look, I think it's extremely accurate. You know, if you look at the decrease in the available impressions on ad-supported television of the highest quality scripted content, more and more content available on platforms that either have limited or no advertising. We actually did this thanks to our research department, many of who are here in the room tonight. In 1996, if you were an advertiser on the 6 Emmy nominees, the top 6 categories, top comedy, top drama, and then the lead actor and supporting actor in those. If you were an advertiser in those 6 in 1996, you would actually reach 200 million people. That exact same exercise today, if you were an advertiser on those 6 nominees, you would reach 19 million people. Yeah. So you actually, that's so correct in that even if you wanted to be able to embrace top-tier quality programming, a lot of the impressions are just not there, except why we're here tonight in sports.
Yeah, no, I think we said it at the upfront. I believe it, and I actually think it's the only way we're going to get there, which is, you know, one of the things about the Fox Networks group as a whole is that the only way you're going to match it is the type of storytellers we have with the scale of sports, and sports is the only thing at that scale today. I mean, period, full stop. You know, despite, you know, conversations people have about, you know, what's up, what's down, and how we define ratings. Like, basically, sports is the only thing that reaches that kind of scale. And I'd even make the argument, if you think about, you know, HBO brought home a whole bunch of Emmys last night, although, you know, I might have my differences of opinions on which ones they deserve versus we did. But if you take the top Emmy winners last night and you did that same exercise that you just talked about, the number of people you could reach as an advertiser is 0.
Right.
Because you can't put an ad in it. I mean, Shonda Rhimes recently left and went over to Netflix, and it might have been, I had a really happy day that day because I don't have to sell against Shondaland on ABC. And at the same time, it's one more thing to tell the agencies, hey, guess what? Great storytellers are gone. You know, I think that one thing I find interesting is some of the best drama left is in sports. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of the stuff, some of the best storylines. I'd love to hear more about the original content, like kind of like outside of the, we'll get into live sports and why that's important, but some of the ancillary stories behind sports that you're thinking about and you know, that I'm going to be able to, you know, sell. So super excited about this.
Well, look, I think just like any business, everybody in the sports category does have a pretty unique strategy going forward. Sports is a pretty big pie. And our strategy, at least, has been from the beginning, we are the only sports media company that exploits the localism, the tribalism of sports in the 4 most popular sports in the country. So we are, by far and away, we have the local rights to 44 of the 88 professional teams in this country through our regional sports networks. We actually, when we got the NFL rights in 1994, we strategically started acquiring, buying over-the-air broadcast stations in all of the NFC markets. So we are, our strategy is capitalizing on the tribalism of local sports. To do that, what we've done is we actually believe that the idea of news and highlights from, like the last 3 decades, news and highlights were kind of the lifeblood of sports, non-event sports on television. I mean, that's really quickly eroded to the point where the phone in your pocket is replacing the need for linear television to have sports and highlights. So,
I mean, the thing telling me that the Giants aren't doing very well. And
yeah, exactly. Or that if anybody has a Yankees score, let me know.
Yeah.
Bases were loaded, top of the 8th. So what we've done well, I think, from day one is relied on really, really big personalities talking about their opinions in sports. And that's the cornerstone of Fox is Fox NFL Sunday. It's the 4 biggest personalities in the NFL, Terry, Howie, Jimmy, and Stray, and Kurt, and we have Jay and Mike Pereira now. But it's not really a football show, right? It's a personality-driven opinion show, and that's why people tune in, to see him have a good time, to see him hang out. It's guys that you want to have a beer with. And that's what we've done. We've replicated all the way through our FS1 linear strategy. And those personalities, again, no single person can own tonight's Giants highlight on the web.
Right.
It's everywhere. Only Fox has Terry Bradshaw, right? Only Fox has Skip Bayless. Only Fox has Colin Cowherd, right? Those are uniquely identifiable personalities that transfer across platform. So outside of the live events themselves, we very much rely on that Fox family of personalities.
What do you think needs to, so talk a little bit about like what your view is, and obviously I have opinions plenty on it, but in terms of what needs to happen with the ad format, the breaks, the way brands participate in live sports versus the way they participate in what we might refer to as studio shows, the programs you just talked about, and kind of give a little bit of that.
Well, look, I mean, we love experimenting with long-term partners, what we call friends of Fox, right? The brands, the clients, advertisers that are all in with us, and then we go all in with them in the sense that we experiment and try things together. We tell stories together. We've had partnerships from day one with certain advertisers that Fox was on the air. So what needs to happen? I think every sport is different, right? NASCAR is different than golf, it's different than baseball, than different than basketball. And we've been trying different and unique things in each of them for the client to achieve their goal, whatever that is. I think that the idea of, in certain sports, aren't facing the same conundrum that entertainment is, in that sports generally have natural breaks.
Right.
And so there's a downtime in the action that can allow for commercial breaks. So the idea of decreased commercial loads is probably not the problem with live sports. Now, we are experimenting with driven by the NFL and their desire to innovate around understanding, how many breaks consumers want or viewers want in a quarter per se. So you might see the rejiggering of ad pods. You might even see, honestly, with these 6-second ads that you've been driving, there are enough natural breaks in, say, a baseball game or a football game that in extreme success, we could eliminate commercial pods altogether.
Right.
There are enough breaks that a producer could say, I can put a 6-second ad in here, a walk to the mound. I can put a 6-1 in here. Would consumers actually enjoy a game better if we never went to commercial, but there were fewer, smaller intermittent breaks? And so those are the things that we love to think about.
Yeah, I couldn't, obviously you can know my opinion. I always laugh about the 6 second. Everyone's asking me like, why the right amount of time? Why was it 6 seconds? And honestly, it was because Google did a whole bunch of research and paid a whole bunch of people and figured out how much money. And I said, great, we'll take that too.
Yeah.
That was literally the thinking behind it. And I constantly feel like the guy from Something About Mary, the crazy hitchhiker, is going to show up and be like, what about 5 second ads? And I'm like, that's crazy. You can't even get a workout in that much time. But if you haven't seen Something About Mary, that's how he does it. That's not me being weird. No, but like I think it's interesting because I will tell you what I find most interesting about the 6 second ads as we've seen creative start to come in. So not only are we doing it, we're challenging. For the first time, people are saying, okay, I'm going to pay a lot of money to take a 6 second ad and put it on television in a very regular cadence. Because there's been different lengths. There's been 1 second ads before, like famously bought in a Super Bowl once, and there's been 5s and bumpers. But when a 6 second becomes a standard, what you're telling the brand is you don't have to buy a 30 or a 15. Use only as much time as you need. You can still buy 30s. You can buy 60s. As a matter of fact, I would like every brand to buy 60s all next week. It would make my life a lot easier. But when you only need 6 seconds to say, hey, this paper towel is the softest, it picks everything up, buy it here, why take 30? Mm-hmm. Why take 30 seconds? And I think the most fascinating thing we can do is start to give more choice, not just to the consumers, but to the advertisers, to say, only take as much as you need. Right. You're filling up 30 seconds because that's all we've told you to fill up. Now, the other reason why 6 seconds is you need standards. Like, you know, I won't give it away, but it was in a room with one of these digital companies who was like, you know, we just don't think, you know, commercials need to have a set length. Like, a story should just be as long as a story needs to be. And I felt like snapping my fingers and like, you know, that's great. The problem is you can't transact on that. Right. Like if there's no market price, there's no market clearing price, there's no currency, and this is why, you know, it's been great to do this with 6 seconds, because nothing like bringing it to the scale of sports. There's just no comparison.
Yeah, and I think that the idea of shorter, you know, 6 is a great length, but the idea that sports already has the most highly engaged audience, like you're actually paying attention, and in that time frame, like there's no question that even in a minute 30 break or a 2-minute break, that at the end of that break, you're probably paying a little bit less attention at the end than you were at the beginning. The ability for us to drop in a 6 second ad, people have paid attention and that message has made an impression before they can even tune out. So now they're back into the game. So we can actually place these in probably more areas of live sporting events where people are more highly engaged than even in a commercial pod.
Yeah, I think as we challenge to get more creativity, you know, I'll be interested. So, I hear we have the World Cup coming up.
No, I should get to work on that.
Yeah,
we have it.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how we have so many of our people here, given that. But talk a little bit about like what you see as the opportunity. You know, one, why? Okay. Let's start with why. Why the World Cup at Fox? Like, why did we say, hey, this is important, this is a tentpole, get involved? And what do you think the opportunity is for us in terms of how we work with brands with it? Because, you know, FIFA is a very particular organization.
Well, I'm a passionate soccer fan. I was fortunate enough to have the company send me to Italy to start a sports company over there called Sky Italia for a while, and was even more in love with soccer once I left than when I got there. That combined with the fact that 21CF is by far the largest investor in soccer around the world with rights. So soccer is what this company does around the world. So when the opportunity came up and we were lucky enough to get the rights through 2026, it was probably one of the most proud moments I've ever had. You know, you're lucky because, you know, you just ended up spending a little more than the guy next to you, so you didn't actually do anything except spend more money in an envelope blindly.
It's great.
But
I'll take it.
But we have it, and now it's a crown jewel of Fox Sports. It is something that the entire company, not just sports, is going to rally around, because anytime you can wrap yourself in the flag and go to compete for your country, it becomes not just a sporting event. Right. It's an event that is going to capture the nation's attention for 31 days next summer. Yeah. And the great thing about the way the rights work is with the NFL, there's a lot of different partners. With baseball, there's different partners, right? With the World Cup, it's just us, right? So if you want to partner and be attached to that event, if you're an official FIFA partner or if you're a partner that just wants to advertise, in the World Cup, it's a unique thing for us to be able to work exclusively with that partner to achieve their goals, tell the stories they want to tell on any platform. So that's what gets us excited about the idea of just having the World Cup and what it means, to the folks at Fox Sports and how excited we are. But it's also one of the most pure kind of relationships we can have with brands too.
But there was a lot of speculation for a long time. So before I came to Fox, I got to see like the outside looking in, like looking at the digital side of the world, and a lot of speculation that soccer never quite got to the level.
What does it look like from the outside? Because from the inside, it's always looked a little bit different.
It's really nice. It's really nice. People. I've said this before I came in. People on the outside used to just throw stones at television. Like, oh man, TV people don't get it. Like, they're the bundle. It's that's a terrible way to do it. Like, this is all bad. But we've all seen this play out. The truth is that everyone knows how the game is being played. It's just that there's so many negotiations, so many rights that you end up at kind of a lowest common denominator in some cases, and then the consumer ends up getting a viewing experience that's dictated by business rules over that. And then you come in and you realize, well, this is actually the best way that we can get to where we are right now. But soccer was one that, there was a lot of hypothesis amongst the advertising community that one of the reasons it didn't take off is because it doesn't have those natural breaks. That, other than when the guy's on the ground rolling around for about 15 minutes saying his leg's broken.
With the
and
spray.
and then they spray air on it and he's like getting up. Like, I honestly think we should just market that stuff.
So by the way, we, at Fox, we take pride in really doing well at explaining the rules. And we have a lot of former referees and officials that work at Fox Sports. Our soccer referee expert, a former FIFA match referee, a guy named Dr. Joe Macknick, he, during the Women's World Cup in Canada, in his little room, he actually had this, the spray that they put on the line, on a free kick, and all the players have to stand behind it. So he had that. I'm like, holy crap, they actually make stuff that says referees spray for the ground, in a soccer thing. Like, they actually make it. So I turned it around, and it said, content unknown. Like, they literally can make stuff that they say contents on. They don't even know what's in it, but it goes on the ground.
I feel like that's like, I remember those, and it's funny because it all ties back to advertising for me. Like, people always say, well, we're not making advertising, we're making branded content. We're going to tell stories. And I was like, I don't know that you need to tell stories. You guys remember Head On Apply Directly to the Forehead? Like, those ads, or 1877 Cars for Kids, like those things that just burrow into your brain, are they content? No, but they're super effective. And so I think about the Head On Apply Directly to the Forehead when I think about the spray, because like there's no way that actually worked, and eventually they had to take it off the air because of some FDA stuff. But I was like, but man, did that work for a message. We'll just start doing that next to it. So but talk a little bit about like with what we've learned with the U.S. soccer that we've been airing, and kind of the work we've done in soccer and how that's going to apply to what we're doing with the World Cup. I mean.
Yeah, look, if you're a soccer fan, this is the greatest country in the world to live. You can watch more soccer
That is
this
a bold
country.
statement. If there's anyone from Europe out there, I can almost hear you.
Look,
hear you.
In Europe.
In an accent.
In Europe, you can't.
Many different accents.
In Europe, you can't watch all the Premier League in the UK. You can't, if you live actually in the country, you don't get as much of that soccer as you do here. Yeah. So I really believe that the soccer fandom in this country is actually at a really high level. And when the fans here know the difference between good soccer and bad soccer, right? And so there is a little bit of an elitist attitude still here to the original kind of soccer core. But that's changing, because if you think about it, when the New York Cosmos came in the 70s, and those teenagers that were fans of the Cosmos and the original soccer hardcore rah-rah in New York, right now is the first time that those teenagers actually have kids of their own that they're sharing soccer fandom with. So if you think about it, in England, soccer is 7 generations old, right? In Italy, 7 or 8 generations old. Spain, the same thing. Actually, soccer in those countries is about the same median age as, the upper end of the NFL or golf. Soccer in this country is really young, and we're only at the beginning of the first generation of the beginning of the second generation of soccer fans in this country. It's going to snowball. It's just math. What's going to happen with soccer here?
I'm curious because, like, you know, a friend of mine got really involved. He was a tech entrepreneur. He got really involved and started his own club league, like FC Stockade. It's in Hudson, and
we don't have them on Fox.
Yeah. You would get all of hundreds of viewers.
Good.
And I wouldn't be able to sell many ads, so I'm very happy that we don't have them on Fox. What I find interesting, though, is do you think, and this is kind of a little outside the scope of the conversation, but since we're having a beer, do you think a club league like style system like they have in Europe could start to really thrive here in the U.S.?
There's a lot of club leagues.
But I mean, do you think it kind of rising up to the tournament level, to the way they do it in Europe, or you think? Because like the thesis has always been, look, every kid, like it's one of the most highly participated sport as children, and yet it didn't, like in the U.S., like, you know, there's soccer moms, soccer dads, like. You
know, there are different levels here. I mean, clearly the American style of sports leagues is very different from Europe or a lot of the rest of the world. We don't have promotion relegation, so you kind of a fixed number of franchises. And I think that the club system, or the way of earning your way up through fourth division, third division, second division, you know, Premier Division.
I learned all this from the Damn United, by the way, as an American football fan.
It doesn't actually exist here. I mean, there is a U.S. Soccer Cup that actually does have MLS players playing against some of the others, but I think it would be very, very difficult here.
So let's move to Ultimate Fighting. Not actually us, because I'd be worried, because you have Jay Glazer, and I hear he's really good at that. So, but like, what do you think where do you see the Fox Sports relationship with Ultimate Fighting over time, and like what the opportunities for brands are? Because that's maybe the opposite of soccer, where you know, soccer has you know, two halves, very limited commercial breaks, some sponsorship of the teams, whereas UFC, I mean, you watch UFC event, you see some brands.
Right. Look, I've had a long relationship with the UFC, and we hope, you know, at Fox we've had a great relationship for the past 6 years, I think. I think we've both come a really long way together, and we hope that it continues for a really, really long time to come. Our DNA is very, very similar. You know, the UFC is 20 years old, 21 years old. Fox Sports is only 24 years old. We're two of the youngest sports brands in this country. And, you know, it's kind of like chocolate and peanut butter. We would go really, really well together. So who knows?
Peanut butter and jelly with that one.
Peanut butter and jelly.
It's a really, it's like, oh, actually, advertising works on you. So Reese's.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So we, you know, when rights come to a conclusion, you know, you either renew them or you don't, or you find some other partnership, but we hope that it continues for a really long time. I will say that, you know, we were the first ones to really take the chance on the UFC and put it on broadcast television. And I think the world hasn't come to an end. I think that it is, unless it has and somebody hasn't told me. Are we in heaven or hell right now?
Did the Yankees finish that win? Because we would really like the Yankees. I was promised a Cubs World Series when I joined, and it doesn't look like I'm going to get that right now. So,
what happened?
2-1. Over?
Oh, nice job.
I would ask for Giant scores, but I don't have enough beer or liquor up here to make it okay.
So the UFC, you know, it's really come a long way, and I think it's a tremendous brand. It's an extremely young, affluent sport that I think a lot of brands have found success, you know, in partnering with, that probably didn't think that they were going to partner with the UFC before Fox came in. So I think we've broken a lot of new ground for them.
It's interesting, like taking that to the macro level, because I say this all the time, just in general in the industry, you know, because you get consumers who like to say, look, I cut the cord, I don't watch ads, I do ad free, and on an individual level, that's fine, right, on one by one, but it is
if one guy does it, it's fine,
perfectly fine.
Exactly.
I wrote a post. I don't think I'm allowed to do this anymore because I now, work at Fox, but I wrote a post before, and I was like, why you need to shut up and love your bundle. And the argument being that the people who call themselves cord cutters were basically ruining it for everyone else, because most of what they were watching was paid for in the cable window, right? Like Mad Men or like, you know, How I Met Your Mother and these things. They were paid for in the cable window. They were watching it on the second window, ad-free, of course. But like if you look at the macro level, television commercials represent somewhere between $40 and $60 billion in ad revenue. There's no way that gets removed from the system, and you still pay writers, actors, producers, like at the level we do. It's just $60 billion worth of salaries gone. There's $60 billion worth of investment in content gone. Sports rights gone. Now, sports rights, you know, I think you and I share this opinion, so feel free, people, to jump out if you'd like to disagree. But as impressions kind of contract, supply and demand would say that's like sports is one of the few places where you can actually buy a reasonable amount of attention at scale. I don't think they've actually reached the price that they should. They should be a lot higher, which I also say because I have a budget to hit. And if you're listening out there and you're in advertising, that's why. So the question is, I mean, what do you think happens next with like at the kind of the macro level with sports and advertising as it compresses elsewhere? As supply compresses?
I think it's a great time to be a customer. I mean, you know, anytime a market goes through a bit of disruption, there's always the projection that it's going to be good for customers. Consumer choice, consumer power is great, right? But in that medium term, the customer has to do a lot of work before the business model figures out what is the most efficient way to deliver what the consumer needs. So right now we're in that time frame where, look, I'm in a rental house now, and I challenged myself to go without cable or satellite to see if I could test out all of the different things. Right. And I will tell you, it is a lot of work to get what you need for kids, for the entire family, right? And it's a lot of work, and technically, I think it's still not quite there. Like you still can't be streaming even at the highest bandwidth that you can get in LA. Yeah, you have problems all the time. I think it works for a certain group probably really well. It's a lot of work to figure out what you want and how to get it, but it's clearly going to get there, right? In some form or fashion, you know.
Yeah, I'll be interested in this. Is that, you know, again, another thing that's a little outside of the scope, but you know, pay for higher speed internet from cable provider XYZ, and then new show comes out on Netflix over the weekend, and everyone's trying to stream it at the same time, and it buffers. And it's because your internet speed actually has no bearing on how fast it gets delivered to you. It's actually, you know, from wherever the content is to that, and the pipes. There's actually, to geek out a little bit about it, like there's Sunday football at the scale of Sunday football with TVs in 4K. Like it will be an interesting experiment to see how much the pipes can actually even handle. Like, we haven't gotten there yet, so it'll be super interesting.
But there's always opportunity in the future when disruption happens. So there's a really great, I think it's probably a Harvard Business School case study on AT&T long distance. Can you imagine being an executive at AT&T watching the world erode with long distance when cell phones come out, and there's no longer a thing called long distance calling for $3 a minute during peak? Holy shit, my business is going to hell. But you know what ended up happening? Two things.
They bought Time Warner.
They decided, they decided, wow, we can tell people that megabits are really, really valuable. Right. We can charge for megabits rather than minutes. Right. And then we're going to get 4 people in a household to have a billing relationship with us rather than 1. Genius. Right. I mean, that's kind of where we may be headed with television and the kind of core bundle, skinny bundle options, which is there might be 5 people in a house that have a billing relationship of $20 with some pay TV offering. I mean, it very well could go there, and it could go there in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think we'll head for, you know, the great rebundling, if you will. Like we saw this play out. It's actually fun to watch history repeat itself. Albums nothing but albums. You have to buy albums. Buy all 16 songs. I don't care if you like them or not. You get 16 songs. Consumer revolt, Napster. Then we get, oh, wow, let's find an easy way for people to buy songs. So Apple iTunes, you can buy each individual song. Consumers go, oh, there's a lot of work to keep up to buy each individual song one at a time. Spotify. Now you have all the songs you want in the world for one subscription price. I would almost be willing to guarantee, I don't know the timeline, but I'd be willing to guarantee that we end up in the exact same place again with television content. I think what's interesting is that the broadcasters have all ended up with a little piece. Like, I hear, I don't know if it's true or not, but because I don't see it, but I hear CBS and NBC and others have some sports stuff on their schedule. No, I mean nothing good, obviously, but I hear they have it. But the reason we all ended up with a piece of it was because of the way subscription services worked and bundles worked. I'd even go a step further to say that we used to bundle video, and we'd also bundle news, and we'd also bundle radio. And now if I turn on my smart TV, right next to the video button is a Pandora or Spotify or iHeart button, right? Like the new bundle could actually be cross-media. So I know sports has a lot of that in terms of there's articles that are written, there's clips, there's audio podcasts, and then there's video. It'll be interesting to see what the kind of the new bundle looks like. And then what does that mean for an advertiser? Because am I cutting a commercial? Am I making an audio ad? Am I supposed to be making a visual ad? It's kind of a bit of a challenge. So what else so on my side, what am I doing wrong? How do I get you more money?
I tell you what's interesting, sitting from our side, you see the type of people, if the pay TV world is changing, albeit changing slowly, the types of people who see the brands in a pay TV bundle that are valuable enough they want to pay for, right? So, we've tried very hard to make all of the Fox brands valuable enough in people's minds that they're worth paying for, right? Yep. The types of people who see that value are, at a certain earning power, certain stage in their life. And when we look at the people who pay for television and consume television, there's always been this kind of clear directive that it's the older demographic that consumes more television, right? The older you get, you consume more. And advertisers have always wanted to go for, the youngest possible, the 18 to 34. That's how you know if you're doing well, if you get the young. But here's what's interesting, at least the way we think about it at Fox, is kind of that 18-year-old today looks a lot like a 15-year-old of 30 years ago. A 21-year-old today looks a lot like an 18-year-old of 30 years ago. The earning power is very similar, right? They're 30 years ago, if you're 22 years old, you probably have a kid, you probably have a house, you probably have a job. 22 years old today, you're probably living at home, just finished school, and have no job prospects whatsoever, right? Cheery. So your earning power, your life, it's very, very different. So why is there still this kind of infatuation with the younger, and by the way, the younger demographic, when they do watch television, they're probably the least engaged. They're probably doing 3 other things at the same time. So in an advertiser's mind, at least in the conversations that you have, is there still this kind of benchmark of, the younger demographic, 18 to 49, let's say, versus kind of clearly identifying the disposable income, the ability to reach them with compelling messages in that older demographic? Does that equalize?
Yeah, it does in reality. It doesn't with the agencies because, I'll tell you guys, the not so dirty and not so, very open secret is that they're not buying 18 to 49. They were never buying 18 to 49. They value every impression they get. And if someone is 55 years old with great buying power, they value that impression. They transact on 18 to 49. And as a matter of fact, they would like, look, this is the thing. This is like there's a negotiation where like they would like to get our impressions for as cheap as possible. We would like to sell them for as much as possible. The funny part about right now in as a time in history is if they keep trying to keep, and by they I mean brands and clients and agencies, the people we work with and we should partner with when we throw partner words around, is that if we keep up this kind of charade of, hey, you want the lowest possible price, but in reality, you're buying every impression, right? But you want to transact at 18 to 49 because you know if the 18-year-olds erode, you're paying a lower price over time, even though you're getting more on the upside. Is that if we keep this up, consumers will just go get Hulu ad-free. They'll buy a DVR box. And this is more in entertainment than live. So in live, what they look at is saying, great, I would like to buy, if they could come to us and say, hey, we want to buy 18 to 34-year-olds, and they thought we would take that as a currency, then we would do it. So that's part of the problem. The second is addressability. We still look, like people complain a lot about Nielsen, and it definitely has its problems. Right. But the good news about a broken system is as long as it's broken for everybody. Like if we're both working off of a broken clock, and I say meet me at 1 o'clock here, but we're working off the same broken clock, we're going to show up at the same place at the same time. It might be the middle of the night, it might be a problem. But now we're moving out of this world where we don't even have that anymore, right? And so let's go past the 18 to 49. We've had this conversation with the 6-second spots. 6 seconds is just a delineation of time. As you pointed out, we can actually put the ads in much more interesting places because of the time. Like the shortening the time allows us more flexibility with where they go. So they're in a different place and they're receiving different types of attention. And yet some agencies will look at us and say, I'm not paying what I paid for a 15 for a 6-second spot. That's crazy because the job is thought to be to negotiate for price. And we go, well, two problems with that. One, you pay a 30-second price for 2 seconds everywhere in digital. I mean, there's like you're comparing us to us. And so, because we think that this is the game we're supposed to play and this is the dance we're supposed to do. You're supposed to get the lowest price possible. We're supposed to make people sit through the most ads to make the money. But in digital, you do that all day, right? And there are some that are just notorious for it. But even more importantly, we say, but it has nothing to do with the time. It just has to do with the quality of attention. Like if we could get to a measure of, did the person see it and do they remember it? And that's pretty much all our job should be, is to say we deliver an audience. Right. You know, our mutual boss's boss got on stage one day at a place I was, and James Murdoch got on stage and said, we're not in the advertising business. And I was like, crap, I just got a new job. Bad news. We're in the audience business. And as soon as advertising makes it tougher for us to be in the audience business, we won't be in the advertising business anymore. And when I talk to agencies, I kind of say a very similar thing, which is like, if we think the price is so low that it actually affects our ability to have an audience, we just won't have ads. I mean, FX just announced FX Plus, right? Hulu ad-free is a very known. Now, what the right price for that is up to the advertiser. This is the first time in the history of the industry that we're on the same side with the advertisers. And rather than us just negotiating over price and fighting over it, you know, my goal is, and with things like 6 seconds and things like we talk about new innovation for sports and entertainment, is we should be on the same side. Can we make the ads suck just a little bit less, just like that much less? Can we make the experience like valued at what it is actually worth rather than everything's a negotiation and a fight? And I think that there are, you know, we know the partners that get there with us, and I think we'll go from there. So we're going to ask, open it up to some questions if anyone's got any. So I'll give you oh, wait. Apparently, you're supposed to wait for the mic so that the people at home,
sure,
you know, stand. They're going to get a nice.
Since we're talking about sports and ads or no ads, a couple of your competitors, both ESPN and Turner, are experimenting with online streaming services for live sports. I don't know if they'll have ads, but I'd guess if you're going to make people pay a big fee that they won't. Is this something that you guys are exploring, and what do you make of what they're doing?
Right. So when it comes to kind of what they call, you know, OTT sports packages, I'd say because of our investment in soccer in this country for the past 15 years, we've had a streaming package called Fox Soccer to Go for about, I mean, it's been almost 10 years now. And it's probably the longest running sports OTT package in the country. And it's successful. You know, it's very specific to soccer fans. We actually have some rugby in there as well. But it's clearly something that we think we've been, you know, a pioneer in. And I think some of the ones that have been announced for the future, we'll see exactly kind of what they have. But I think every sports media company has either done one, announced one, or is preparing for one. I think it becomes trickier when you talk about how compelling, is the offering between your kind of primary rights, secondary rights, third-tier rights that go into it. So I think you have to have a lot more, probably detail, about what it is. But I feel pretty good that we've got a lot of learning under our belt of going direct to consumer with a sports brand already.
And on the advertising side, I say the exciting part about digitally delivered sports is to take, again, the scale of sports, but with all the advantages of digital. There are players out there who have a lot of data, and they could tell you that, well, because I know that you have a dog and you live on a dirt road, that you're the most likely person that's going to need a truck to get in and out of your home, and so you need a truck. But they have no way to make you watch said truck ad. I don't know if you've ever been scrolling through a feed and seen an ad and said, you know what I need to do is stop and watch this ad. So, but if we could take that level of data and apply it to a place where we can get people to watch a Ford ad, right? Like a sporting event where there's natural breaks, it should be incredibly valuable. Imagine this. Back to no one's actually buying 18 to 49-year-olds. We're transacting on 18 to 49-year-olds. What Ford would like to buy is truck drivers or truck contenders or people who might someday buy a truck or people who have a truck. Let's say that universe is one out of...
Well, that's everybody.
Well, yes.
Everybody wants a truck, right?
Everybody, and by the way, I'll go a step further. Actually, I do agree in that not only could everyone someday maybe have a truck, but a brand mattering just to me doesn't matter if you don't know that the car I'm driving, means X, Y, and Z, is good for the environment, gets more to the guys, tough, Ford tough, etc. But let's just imagine, let's make up some numbers for easy math. Let's say 1 in 10 people is a potential truck buyer, just making up those numbers. They run an ad and they pay a $30 CPM rate, cost per thousand. What they really did was paying $300 per potential truck driver, right? Now, let's imagine that I have enough data to say, we're streaming something to you, and we're streaming something to you, and you're a potential truck driver, and you're not. If I could just show it to the potential truck drivers, would you pay me $200 per thousand? You're actually working out better off for you, because it's lower than the $300 you used to be paying. It's way better for us, obviously, than what we were getting paid. That's actually the promise of digitally delivered linear streams for advertising. That's the goal, right? Because what the Facebooks and Googles of the world will say is, I can get you all the potential truck drivers. They just have no way to actually deliver the ad.
But don't people want to know that they can plan to get those impressions of that exact one? Or is it an auction at that time? So it might go for $222.
Yeah. That's a really good question.
You're targeting in real. You don't know who's going to watch, right? You don't know how many of those people when they start that stream. So how do you actually sell that?
So I think you do it the same way we do now. We don't know how many people are actually in the 18 to 49 demo before we start. We do forecasting and upfront. I was in with one of our largest clients, and they said, "Oh, you come from the digital world. You probably are so excited to blow up the upfronts. You must hate the upfronts." It's like, I disagree. I would actually like 3-year deals, 4-year deals, 5-year deals. I think human attention is the most valuable asset on planet Earth. And if you can find places where you think...
What'd you say?
Human attention. Wait, I got it.
I had an alert.
Hold on. I think it's the most valuable asset on Earth. And therefore, if you can find places where it's going to be, then you should lock it in now. Now, to your question, how do you know how many people are going to be there ahead of time? I don't think it should be live auction. I think if you're opening a movie next weekend, you need to know how much you're going to get.
Exactly.
We can forecast pretty accurately how many people are watching, and then we can forecast inside of that universe how many of them are, because they already know. Right now, when we're opening a movie on the Fox film side, we know about how many in a universe of who's watching a sporting event is likely to go to the movies. So they're already, we know that too internally on our research side. So there is forecasting that goes, you want people to reserve ahead of time. I actually think you have to reserve something like this. I don't think it's possible to do everything in a live auction status. It won't work.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, in any market where something's undervalued, like attention is right now, if you can arbitrage the market, if you can say, all right, I know for a fact these commercials work better than those commercials. These commercials are more likely, I want to reserve it. Later I'll figure out what the creative is. It'll actually be big.
I think that's why I'm such a strong believer in, our long-term bet with a lot of our sports partners, in that I like the idea of arbitraging human attention. Mm-hmm. I mean, I firmly believe, we have a great slide that that last year, 157 scripted or reality shows got canceled or are not returning. I'm pretty sure that in 22 years, the Yankees are still going to be around, right? And so,
You told me that about the Giants.
That's
I really
why
appreciate it.
the Giants will probably still be around.
Okay.
Too. But very few sports teams actually get canceled. So that's why we are such long-term believers in the tribalism, the passion of sports, and really arbitraging human attention when it comes to that.
Well, I'll say something that I've always lamented on the entertainment side, which is just exactly what you were pointing out earlier. If you took the top 6 from the most awarded shows, you could reach 100 million people, 20, whatever it is. Today, there's very few things. They used to call it water cooler talk, where you could just talk about the things you saw the other night on television. You can't do that anymore. Oh, I'm on episode 6, season 2 of Sons of Anarchy. Oh wait, no, I'm not there yet. Please don't tell me anything. But man, sports, like, you can talk about the next day. I actually think there'll be a greater draw to it because it creates common narratives. Like, we as people want to talk and discuss subjects and stories, and there's very few ones that we are not afraid we're going to ruin. I mean, come on, you have all had a conversation with someone where you said, wait, are you caught up on X before you tell them the story of what you would like to talk to them about?
Yeah, I think that's why linear television will probably become more and more live over time, whether it's sports or news, and I think that's why. At least in our company's portfolio, very, very strong live sports and news portfolio, and a really, really strong creative engine in the studios, both movie and television and FX. So it just ends up being, okay, you're really, really strong, in what is happening now, right, which is live television. And I think you're really well set up for the future monetization of creative content, whether it's subscription-based, no ads, or you get to a point where there actually is many more platforms that see the value in lower cost to consumer, ad-supported.
Yeah. I give my favorite new example, and it's related, well, newish. It's related to the Super Bowl, which I think it's a shame that they're not going to play the Super Bowl again until Miami 2020. I don't know why they canceled it the next 2 years. But I hear the NFC Championship games will be great. But everyone complains about the cost of Super Bowl ads, right? They say Super Bowl ads super expensive, $7 million, $8 million. Who knows where they get to? I'm going to guess somewhere around $10 or $12 million an ad by 2020. If reserved now for 8. But here's the challenge, and I'd be willing to do this. I'm trying to get everyone to sign off at Fox. If you want to help me out and get some sign off, I would challenge the market digitally. I will give $20 million to anyone who can get me Super Bowl reach, and I'll give them a week to do it in digital. A week, what Super Bowl does in one moment. And here's the stipulation. The ads have to take up the entirety of the screen for the full duration of the ad, with the sound on, to 100 million unduplicated people in the US. And if anyone can do that, and by the way, unless Facebook roadblocks so you can't get into Facebook without doing it, and even then I don't know if they could do it in a week, that's the scale. And that's for $20 million. So the idea that it's expensive is relative to what's possible out there, and I think that's where the ad market hasn't quite caught up to how people value their time. Somewhere along the way, the advertising market forgot that their CPM rate is someone else's time, right? A $20 CPM rate values anyone in this room's time at 2 cents for 30 seconds of their time. So that means that you make about $1.20 an hour, you should probably buy the ad-free option. Our goal should be together to get that to a more reasonable price, and sports is one of the best places to test because it'll be actually super interesting to see what new formats look like. Do we have time for more questions? I don't even know where we are in time.
Being involved in sports and advertising, I'm surprised to hear of your interest in soccer and UFC. When you see the Corona ads and these pretty girls in bikinis on the beach, soccer is 45 minutes running time, and those ads with the girls on the beach is a lot better than a little line across the top saying drink Corona. And as far as UFC is concerned, they fight for 5 minutes, and the 1 or 2 times I've been with people watching UFC, talk about a turnoff. When the bell ends the round, they're off in a second someplace else. So your interest in those 2 sports is interesting to me because it seems they're the least 2 sports that would be conducive to advertising.
No, I think both really good points. I mean, soccer is a tried and true format around the world, and I think that soccer has been one for us around the world that, traditionally sports inside of our company is at least a dual revenue stream, if not more. Soccer in the parts of the world where we're trying to distribute channels, platforms we're trying to get new customers, soccer is a powerful driver of customer acquisition. So soccer clearly, especially when we talk about the World Cup, because it's a month-long tournament and so much shoulder programming. We have 2-hour pre-games in between matches, post-games on all different platforms. It's really about the shoulder programming and the halftime. I mean, we jam-packed, halftime full of ads. But it really is a driver of our subscription fees. And I would say the UFC for us has been one where our relationship with them started right when we were starting Fox Sports 1. It was an opportunity to have a sport exclusively, and it was a sport that still is growing in popularity. So in our negotiation with cable companies, it made the FS1 brand much stronger for carriage. And it also makes our brand stronger for our distribution agreements with the new players like YouTube TV, Hulu, PlayStation View. So in our portfolio of sports rights, some are probably more on the advertising side of the pendulum. Some are probably more on the subscription side of the pendulum, just because of, like you say, the formats, et cetera. And there's only a minute of commercials in between rounds. Probably the two that you mentioned are probably more on the subscriber end of the pendulum.
And also what's interesting about both of those platforms is actually finding things besides typical commercial breaks that make sense. So for the World Cup, we're launching an entire documentary series called Phenoms to look at the stories that lead up to it and how do brands want to bring us the stories that lead to where they're going, rather than just saying it's about the live game itself. So I think that's the something's moving. I think that's actually the interesting thing is so the challenge, which kind of gets thrown over at our side, is say, okay, there isn't normal commercial breaks in this. What stories would brands want to tell? And the thing that gets me excited about the World Cup in particular, we talked a little bit about it earlier, is it's not even just about soccer. It's like kind of this one moment of kind of community and something that brands want to be around that's global, and there'll be this palpable energy. So how do you bottle that up and sell it? I think Coke and Pepsi have their own ideas. They tell, but there's something that can be done there. We just haven't. It's not a typical commercial break, which I actually like because the typical commercial breaks we know how to move. I think we have time for one more because I saw the time go up there. So anyone else?
Much as I support your interest in soccer, let me ask an NFL question. It's been kind of up and down, at least in the last season for NFL on its various platforms, kind of a fractionating of it. And there's been a great deal of competition with other sports, as well as other forms of, if you will, entertainment. There's also a concern about the injuries in the NFL, which goes not just professional, but down to college and below that. So what's your reckoning as to where the NFL will be in 20 years? Will it still be a, if you will, television broadly defined sport of interest, or will it disappear?
I think that the football passion, and when I say football, I mean American football. I think that the football passion in this country will never go away. Last year in this country, you can talk about youth participation rates. Last year in this country, there were more college players playing college football than ever before. And those are the feeders that actually go into the NFL, clearly. So exactly what form does the NFL take in 20 years? Really hard to predict next week. And I won't even predict next week. But I will say that I firmly believe, especially when you do business in the places that we do business in, the core parts of Fox Sports, I talked about having the local rights to 44 of the 88 teams in this country. Our business is in the middle of this country. And that's why we believe that baseball is alive and well. Like you go to a Cardinals game, it is packed. We are doing 13 ratings in St. Louis for baseball. We're doing 22 ratings in Cleveland during the streak. It's unheard of. I mean, that's more than all the primetime broadcast networks put together. So when I go to those parts of the country and I see the passion for football, I don't think that passion is going to go away. I think football will still be the sport that it is today. I think it'll be safer. I think that you will have the most prolific athletes still wanting to play football in this country. So exactly what form that takes at the highest level, I don't know. But I'm a strong believer in what football means to this country, both on the field and what it does for young men off the field. I mean, America, football is as important to America as a lot of the things that we don't spend nearly as much time with.
Well, that sounds like a really good apple pie.
It is.
Thing to end on, so I can go check the end of the game and see if I can still be a fan of the Giants
exactly.
this week, or if we're in the Darnold sweepstakes after today. So thank you, everybody. Thanks
guys.
so much.
Thank you.